It's your first fire, kid. You ready?
Ladder 1 entering the structure heading to the third floor to search for victims.
Ooh, hot stuff. Where do we go?
Get up to the ladder and get the water on the fire while we wait for engine 3. Ladder 1 is reaching the third floor. Are you able to exit the shower and hit the fire station?
Ooh. All right, who's in there?
Get the fire out of those apartments so we can search for victims.
Yes. No problem.
Nice job, kid. Ladder 1 is here to dispatch. Fire station's on the third floor.
Hot stuff.
Ladder 1 will be searching for victims on the third floor. Copy, Ladder 1. Kid, keep an eye on the fire in those center apartments so we don't lose our way out.
This fire is
Ladder 1
fire.
here to dispatch. Multiple victims located. 3 members of my crew will be bringing them down. Copy, Ladder 1. EMS standing by. Copy that. Be advised, we've got another victim on the fourth floor. We're going to call it to bring them out. I'll be having 5 search for victims. Copy, Ladder 1. Additional ambulances are on route. Ladder 1 is here conducting search for life on the 5th floor.
That seems really bad.
Mayday. Ladder 1 lieutenant declared a mayday. Explosion is happening in the 5th floor corner apartment. I got fire on all sides of me. Got no way out of the wall here. Get me.
Man.
I repeat, mayday.
Oh.
Ladder 1 lieutenant, I'm trapped in the corner apartment. 5th floor. Now bail out. Doors on the windows. Low on air. Immediate rescue. Immediate rescue.
Can I go up with the button?
Get up here.
All right, here we go. Uh-oh. Hey, dude. There's an accident. We're at an accident. Yeah, might want to take that one that's there.
Come on, get up here.
Where I am coming.
Get up, line up. Get those steel bars off.
Stuck. Oh, shit. Okay. Come on, dude.
You did good today, kid. Your dad would have been proud.
I hope there's not too many more of you. All right. What's that? Oh, look at that. Got a middle I'll leave that with you. Wow. Okay, so you guys had a lot going on there. Certainly,
you certainly an immersive experience where you have to actually get into the outfit. So that certainly, like, I don't know if we've ever had like a guest-friendly thing wearing the firefighting outfit. Not that I remember. I don't remember ever having to put that on before. So that part was certainly cool. And then you had a series of different things I had to do. Now, this has an onerous control scheme, but you guys talked me through it, and it just kind of is what it is. So we had hose control and bucket control, and then this kind of dramatic part at the end. At Interim, you guys had a lot of complexity in some of the story business, and you cut it way back, right? So you cut it into, I've got to climb the ladder, I've got to use the hose on the fire, then I've got to use the bucket, I've got to climb up, I've got to chop the window and get the guy out. That's a pretty good sequence of events. It's a nice set of things that all can potentially work. I needed a lot of prompting, and I think part of the prompting was for me, I really believed, like, yeah, I'm going to be able to really make progress on this. But the world had kind of shifted into the, hey, Mayday, you got to come get me. And not being a properly trained firefighter, I did not really know what to do. I was kind of like awaiting a more direct order. And I guess so I think I was awaiting for someone to tell me to go, right? I was waiting for kind of a chain of command situation as opposed to this guy's just radioing for help. And I was supposed to go in and help, and it needed to occur to me to kind of use the bucket. And so that was a bit of a shift because I've been using the hose and the hose and the hose and the hose, and now I've got to do the bucket. So interactively, it probably would have made sense for you to make me use the bucket before I used the hose. So then when it was time to use the bucket again, it was a little more familiar. But you did that with the ladder. You made me use the ladder at the beginning, and then I have to use the ladder further. Later on. Definitely awkward was the business of carrying the axe while trying to climb, because there was this one part where I'm like, I'm afraid if I open my hand, I want to let go of the ladder, but like I'm afraid the axe is going to fall. So there was a little bit of a mixed message in terms of what does gripping actually mean. And I think you told me ahead of time that the grip trigger is for the axe, and then the index trigger is for the ladder. Yeah. But like that's super hard to remember, and it's one of the experiences I've had with the Oculus controllers testing with people. People have a really hard time separating these two fingers, right? Because part of the way the human hand works is the human hand likes to separate up the middle, the kind of Vulcan split, right? And that's how it likes. It's harder to kind of keep these apart. Anyway, so story-wise, you had a lot of great things, and wow, that moment at the end where you have to reach out for the guy, it's scary because you're up there and then his hand comes out, and so it's a great moment. And you had great use of that. How were you doing the heat? Was this just like an idea? Because I was like, where was that coming from? Wow, it's just a space heater and they're waving it around, I guess. And it really is very effective in there when you feel the heat on your neck in there. That was very effective. So you had a lot of great things. I think the main things looked great. The main knock on the world certainly is, not like the interface. There's a lot to learn for such a short time. That would probably be the one thing that is a challenge about it. But even in submitting this for a festival kind of context, you guys were getting through it by kind of whispering hints in my ear and that sort of thing to kind of keep me going. And that was okay, given the context.
And just to be clear, the bucket's under your control.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, you could have been getting closer to the fire, or like
I could have, right? I could have, but I didn't feel like I needed to.
Yeah.
Right. So just to be clear, just so everybody knows what these interfaces are: left thumbstick is the hose. Right thumbstick is the bucket in kind of X and Y, and then the two buttons on the right, like lift and lower the bucket. And do the two buttons on the left do anything? No, but you do have two different grips on the left.
Right.
But one grip, no grips on the right.
No.
No grips on the right. So there's a lot going on. You've got to really train your fingers up for this.
And just watching it, the ladder moment at the beginning is really strong. Like, it's very in your face and like a moment. And then you get to the top and like the fire is pretty far away. And I think that's where the world feels the weakest is when things are far away and removed. It's sort of like, oh, almost like a video game, like shooting out fires. But then once the world moved close and like got to the window, the intensity sort of ramped back up. And I actually just watching it, I assumed the bucket was almost a cutscene. That it was like, oh,
Yeah, no.
like the world pulled you in, but it was definitely like all that was sort of on you to figure out. The voiceover, I was sort of like, it's very radio chatter, so it was like kind of hard to like make out what was going on. And I sort of lost that, but I'm curious also in the head mount.
Yeah, and I was kind of, mayday, I'm up in the corner room, trapped in no egress, you know, so it was a little, I mean, he wasn't, I mean, it is funny, like radio voice is totally a real thing with firefighters. That was one of the ways, so I used to, Shauna Tellerman and I had a company together called SimOps Studios, which was training simulations for firefighters. And one of the ways we knew we had our sims right was when during a sim, they would go into radio voice. Because you knew they were buying it. Because if they weren't, they were just like, oh yeah, there's a problem over here. But if they went into, oh yeah, no, first floor, completely clear. You know, they when they went into radio voice, you knew that they were buying into it. And I don't know if a guy trapped calling Mayday would necessarily, like I wasn't, the parts of my brain looking for people in distress, it wasn't quite triggered by that. So yeah, I mean, again, this is a world I think mainly about, there's a lot of little things I wished were a little different. I would have loved it if the guy, you know, behind the bars there was like, there's an axe in the bucket, get the axe. If he was telling me to do it, then it would have been sort of cool for that to happen, because definitely getting the axe and then climbing the ladder. Oh, I have to climb the ladder to get out of the bucket though, don't I? So you do need to take the axe with you when you go up there. Yeah, okay. Anyway.
Well, and just watching that, getting close to the stuff felt just much more engaging, and it, like, oh man, like this world now is like getting somewhere, and I think those are the strong moments where, like, instead of being sort of removed, and I'm saying something, the contrast, like starting out far, like made the close in stuff possibly feel a bit more intense, and those were definitely the strongest watching it. Like, oh yeah, like there's a real like fire and a real person to be worked with here, as opposed to just sort of like a facade of a building. And it was a noticeable shift in the experience, and I think that's where things got to be, especially sort of more emotional, more visual from just watching it.
There were little things I kept finding myself wanting, like some of the sound effects, like chopping the bars. That, like, if that, I think there's a sound effect, but it was kind of faint compared to everything else that was going on. Similarly, the spraying of the hose, I guess for some of the things I was doing, I was looking for more stronger reaction sound effects and things, but really it's your structure, the sequence of things, the look of everything is great, and it just, like, I found myself wanting little polished things, but overall it was a really nice integration of story and interactivity. And one of the things Randy would always say is that one of the things VR is best at is creating situations that you couldn't necessarily do in real life. And so that was part of what made that really exciting. I've never done anything where I had such a feeling of like, okay, yeah, no, I'm really climbing a ladder. I mean, I'm even feeling the heat from the fire. So that was pretty great.
Good work, guys.
Yeah.